The cafe was buzzing that afternoon, filled with the hum of conversations and the hiss of espresso machines. I had been coming here for weeks, always carrying my laptop, pretending to work but secretly waiting for her. I didn't even know her name then, but I knew her routine. She always came at 4 p.m., dressed in elegant yet casual clothes, her fingers adorned with a simple gold wedding band that glinted whenever she reached for her cup. That ring should have told me to keep my distance. But her eyes told a different story. The first time they met mine, I felt something electric. They were the kind of eyes that carried both secrets and longing, the kind that made you feel like she had lived through storms and was still searching for sunlight. One day, fate pushed us together. The cafe was unusually crowded, and there was only one seat left, right across from her. She looked up, and instead of brushing me away, she smiled. "Looks like we're roommates for coffee," she said softly, her voice low, warm, and threaded with humor. I laughed nervously and sat down. That close, I noticed the way her perfume lingered in the air, something subtle, floral, and intoxicating. I noticed the way her fingers tapped on the rim of her cup, restless yet graceful. We talked. At first, it was small things, books, coffee, the chaos of city life. But soon, our conversation stretched, becoming the highlight of my days. She told me she was married, almost like a disclaimer, as though she wanted to protect me from something. But the way her eyes lingered on mine, the way her laughter softened when I leaned closer, said she wanted something she hadn't had in a long time. And then, one rainy evening, when thunder cracked outside and the cafe lights flickered, she whispered words I'll never forget. "Sometimes I wonder if I married the right person." Her fingers brushed mine on the table, deliberate and trembling. My chest tightened, my breath caught. That wedding ring might have belonged to someone else, but in that moment, her heart felt like it was already slipping into my hands. I didn't move away. I couldn't. And from that instant, I knew, whatever this was, whatever it could become, was going to change both of us forever. After that night in the cafe, everything shifted between us. I could feel it in the way she texted me afterward, short, hesitant at first, then growing longer, warmer, filled with playful teases and late-night confessions. I learned her name, Elena. It suited her perfectly, elegant, timeless, a name that lingered on the tongue like honey. We started meeting more often. Sometimes at the cafe, sometimes at the park nearby, where the benches were shaded with trees and our conversations could stretch without interruption. She told me about her job, her dreams of traveling, the books she used to love before life got too heavy. She never spoke much about her husband, and I never pushed. But silence has its own language, and I could read between the lines. One evening, we walked along the river. The city lights glittered on the water, and her arm brushed mine again and again, until finally she didn't move away. I turned to her, heart pounding so loudly I was sure she could hear it. "Elena," I whispered, her name tasting dangerous and beautiful all at once. She looked at me with those storm-filled eyes, lips parted as if she wanted to speak but couldn't. And then, without words, she leaned closer. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, trembling, filled with hesitation. But the moment her lips touched mine, everything inside me unraveled. Heat spread through my chest, down to my fingertips, and I kissed her back like I had been waiting my whole life for that moment. Her hand cupped my face, her wedding band cold against my skin, reminding me of the reality we were shattering. But instead of guilt, I felt an ache so deep it was almost unbearable, because for the first time, Elena wasn't hiding. She was giving herself to me. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, she pressed her forehead to mine. "I shouldn't," she murmured, but her voice was shaking. "God, I shouldn't want this." I held her hand, squeezed it gently. "But you do," I whispered. She closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek, and then she laughed, a broken, beautiful laugh. "Yes. I do." And right there, under the glow of the city, I knew we had crossed the line. We weren't just friends, weren't just two women caught in stolen glances. We were something deeper, something raw and real, something forbidden. Her ring said she belonged to someone else. But in that kiss, in her trembling laughter, her heart screamed the truth. It said mine. After that kiss, nothing was the same. Every meeting carried a dangerous undercurrent, every glance a promise of something more. Elena and I stopped pretending we were just friends. The air between us was heavy with unspoken desire, and every touch, every brush of her fingers, felt like a secret we were weaving together. The first night we truly gave in happened unexpectedly. She invited me over, her voice hesitant on the phone, saying her husband was away on a business trip. I told myself it was just for dinner, just for company. But deep down, I knew better. Her apartment was warm, filled with the scent of rosemary and garlic as she cooked. I sat on the counter, watching her move around the kitchen with a grace that made my heart ache. She poured us wine, and the more we laughed, the more the space between us seemed unbearable. When she leaned against the counter beside me, her hand brushed mine again. I didn't think this time. I just reached for her. The kiss started desperate, like we had both been starving. Her hand slid to my waist, pulling me closer until my legs wrapped around her, my back pressed against the cool counter. The taste of wine lingered on her lips, sweet and intoxicating, and I couldn't stop myself from kissing her harder, deeper, as if I could consume all the years she had been unloved. Elena, I gasped against her lips, the sound of her name sending shivers through me. She pressed her forehead against mine, her breath ragged. I'd dreamed of this, she whispered. I thought it was wrong, but, with you, it feels like the only thing that's right. Her wedding band grazed my skin as her hand slid beneath my shirt, and for a moment the cold metal burned hotter than fire. It was a reminder of the world outside this room, the man who claimed her. But right then, it didn't matter. In her touch, in her trembling sighs, Elena belonged only to me. We spent the night in each other's arms, wrapped in sheets tangled with heat and laughter. I memorized every curve of her body, every sound she made when I kissed her the way she deserved. She traced her fingers over my skin as if she was writing her name there, marking me, claiming me. When dawn broke, she lay with her head on my chest, her wedding ring catching the faint light. It should have filled me with guilt, but instead, I felt only the fierce certainty that no piece of gold could ever claim her the way her heart already had. She lifted her head, eyes soft, and whispered, I don't know what this makes me. I kissed her forehead gently. It makes you mine. And in that fragile, stolen morning, she didn't argue. She just held me tighter. After that first night, there was no going back. Elena and I were drawn to each other like magnets, no matter how much she tried to fight it. Days without her felt empty, and when I finally saw her again, it was as though the world lit up in color. We met in secret, sometimes at her apartment, sometimes in tucked-away hotel rooms where no one could recognize us. Every time, she would walk in nervous, glancing over her shoulder as if the weight of her ring was pulling her down. But the moment her lips touched mine, her doubts melted into hunger. I feel alive with you, she whispered once, her breath hot against my ear as her hands explored me like I was something sacred. Like I'd been sleepwalking my whole life and you finally woke me up. Her words wrapped around me, burning deeper than any touch. We weren't just lovers, we were confessions, sins, and salvation all tangled together. Each kiss was a rebellion, each touch a reminder that passion doesn't ask for permission. But passion comes with a price. I could see it in her eyes after we made love, when silence would fill the room. She would trace circles on my skin, her brow furrowed, lost in thoughts she couldn't say aloud. I didn't need her to speak to know what haunted her, the life she was supposed to be living versus the one she actually wanted. One evening, as we lay tangled in sheets, she pulled her hand back and stared at her wedding band. The faint light made it gleam cruelly, a reminder of the vow she had given to someone else. Elena, I said softly, brushing my fingers against her cheek. Do you regret this? Her eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. No. Never you. She exhaled shakily, clutching my hand. I'm scared. Scared of losing myself. Scared of what happens if anyone finds out. I kissed her palm, letting her ring press against my lips. Then let the world think what it wants. I know the truth. That ring doesn't own you. Your heart does. She closed her eyes, trembling, and whispered, and my heart is yours. Those words were enough to drown out the fear, for a little while. But deep inside, we both knew we were walking a dangerous edge. One slip, one rumor, one wrong look, and the fragile world we built in stolen nights could shatter. And yet, even knowing that, neither of us could stop. Elena wasn't just a secret anymore, she was an addiction. And addictions don't let go easily. The longer our affair stretched, the harder it became to pretend it wasn't changing everything. Elena had mastered the art of playing the perfect wife in public, but behind closed doors, she unraveled in my arms. She gave me her laughter, her tears, her longing, and in return, I gave her the piece of myself I had never dared to offer anyone else. But secrets have a way of spilling over. One night, we met at a quiet hotel on the edge of town. I had been waiting in the room, pacing with restless excitement, when she finally walked in. She looked breathtaking as always, though her smile was tighter than usual. I pulled her close, kissed her deeply, but she pulled back too quickly, her hand lingering on my chest. I think he's starting to notice, she whispered, her voice trembling. My stomach sank. What do you mean? He asked why I've been distracted. Why I've been smiling at my phone. She pressed her hand against her forehead, her wedding ring catching the dim light like a cruel reminder. I lied, of course. But he knows something is different. I cupped her face gently. Do you want me to stop? To let you go? The words nearly killed me to say, but I had to. Her eyes widened, almost panicked. No. Don't say that. Please. You're the only thing that feels real in my life. Relief and heartbreak tangled inside me. I kissed her forehead, pulled her against me, and whispered, then we'll find a way. Even if it means being careful. Even if it means hiding. Her lips found mine again, desperate, needy, as if she was trying to chase away her guilt with passion. And I let her, because I needed her just as much. But that night, after she fell asleep in my arms, I stared at her ring. It seemed heavier than ever, like a chain around her finger. I wondered how long we could keep living in the shadows before the light found us. I should have felt guilty, but I didn't. Instead, I felt defiant. If love was a crime, then I was guilty gladly. Because every time Elena whispered my name with trembling lips, every time she chose me in secret over the man waiting at home, I knew the truth. Her ring may have belonged to him. But her heart? Her heart was mine. And sooner or later, we'd both have to decide how far we were willing to go to keep it that way. The weeks that followed were a storm. Elena grew restless, caught between two worlds she could no longer balance. With me, she was wild and unguarded, laughing too loudly, kissing too deeply, loving too freely. But with him, she wore her mask, and every time she returned to me, the cracks in that mask grew wider. One evening, she arrived at my apartment drenched in rain, her hair clinging to her face, her eyes shining with a fire I hadn't seen before. She didn't even speak. She just grabbed me, pulled me into a kiss that tasted of desperation and salt, and whispered against my lips, I can't keep living like this. I held her face, kissed her back until we both trembled. Then don't. Stay. Stay with me. Her chest rose and fell quickly, her wedding ring pressing cold against my skin as she clutched at me. Do you even know what you're asking? If I leave him, it changes everything. My family. My reputation. My life. And what about your happiness? I asked softly. What about the way you come alive when you're with me? Doesn't that matter more than a life lived half asleep? She stared at me, tears pooling in her eyes. You make it sound so simple. Because it is, I whispered. Love isn't supposed to be a cage. It's supposed to set you free. For a long time, she said nothing. She just held me, trembling, as though the weight of her decision was pressing down too heavily to bear. That night, when we made love, it was different, slower, deeper, filled with an ache that felt like both a beginning and an ending. Afterward, she lay beside me, tracing patterns on my skin. "If I do this," she said quietly, "I need to know, you'll be there. Not just for the passion, not just for the thrill. But for the hard parts too. For the days when the world hates me for choosing you." I turned to her, kissed her hand, and whispered, "I'll be there. Every day. For as long as you'll let me." She closed her eyes, a single tear slipping free. And in that moment, I knew she was standing at the edge of something life-altering. The question was no longer whether Elena loved me, her every kiss had already answered that. The question was whether she was brave enough to step beyond the ring, beyond the lie, and claim the life her heart had been screaming for all along. And though she didn't say it aloud, I saw the answer flicker in her eyes. Soon, she would choose. The night it happened, I knew before she even spoke. Elena stood in my doorway, pale, her hair pulled back too tightly, her eyes red from crying. She stepped inside without a word, her hands trembling as she reached for me. I wrapped her in my arms, and for a moment, she just buried her face in my chest, shaking. "I told him," she whispered, her voice cracked and broken. My heart stopped. "Told him, about us?" She nodded, her tears soaking through my shirt. I couldn't keep lying. I thought he'd already guessed, but when I said it out loud, her body shuddered. He looked at me like I was a stranger. Like the woman he married never existed. I held her tighter, my own emotions tangling into a storm, relief, fear, guilt, hope. What did he say? He yelled. He begged. He accused. He asked if it was just a phase, if you tricked me, if I was confused. Her voice trembled. And then he asked the question I couldn't lie about. "What question?" I asked, brushing her damp hair from her face. She lifted her gaze to mine, eyes shining with raw truth. "If I loved you." The silence between us was deafening. My breath caught, my chest burning. "And what did you say?" Her lips quivered, and then the words spilled out, soft but fierce. I said yes. I told him I love you. The room tilted, my knees nearly giving out beneath the weight of those words. I kissed her, hard, desperate, tasting the salt of her tears. She clung to me like I was the only anchor left in her unraveling world. When we finally pulled apart, her face was wet but her eyes blazed with certainty. He told me I had to choose. Him or you. My marriage or my heart. Fear wrapped around me, cold and merciless. "And?" I whispered. She pressed her forehead to mine, her breath shaky. "I haven't given him an answer yet. But I already know. I knew the moment I kissed you that first night." Her fingers gripped my shirt, her voice breaking. "It's you. It's always been you." I kissed her again, gentler this time, as though sealing a promise between us. "Then choose me. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Now." She closed her eyes, a trembling smile forming through her tears. And in that fragile moment, I knew she was ready to shatter the cage she had lived in for years. Her ring said married. But her heart had finally spoken its truth. It said mine. The morning light streamed through the curtains as Elena sat at my kitchen table, her coffee untouched, her hands clasped tightly together. Her wedding ring glimmered faintly, as if mocking her. She turned it slowly, then finally slid it off. The sound it made when she placed it on the table was louder than thunder. "I told him," she said quietly. "I told him I was leaving." My chest tightened. "And?" "He begged me to stay. Promised he'd change, that things would be different. But I've been living on promises for years." She lifted her eyes to mine, and I saw something there I had never seen before: freedom. For once, I want to live for myself. For love. For you. The ring lay between us, small and insignificant, while the weight of her decision filled the room. I reached across the table, took her trembling hands, and whispered, "You don't know how long I've been waiting to hear that." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but she was smiling now, a soft, radiant smile that seemed to banish the shadows from her face. Then don't let me regret it. I leaned across the table, kissed her with every ounce of love I had, and when she pulled me into her arms, it felt like the world had finally fallen into place. That night, we celebrated not in secrecy, not in shame, but in joy. Our bodies tangled, our laughter echoing through the walls, our whispers carrying the weight of promises that would no longer be hidden. Every kiss tasted like victory, every touch like destiny. "I'm yours," she breathed against my lips, her hands gripping me as though she'd never let go. "All of me. No more lies. No more hiding." I kissed her fiercely, my heart hammering. "And I'm yours. Always." When dawn crept in, we lay together, her head resting on my chest, her hand curled around mine. The ring was gone, left behind on a table like an artifact of a life she no longer claimed. And as I stroked her hair, I realized something simple, something undeniable. Her ring had once said married. But her heart had always said mine.